he has graciously volunteered to accept donations on Jim's behalf. The donations will be to CHIO or to the Lung Association. For those of you who don't know me, and there are many of you in the room, my name is Neil Card, and I'm honored to be here today to pay tribute to my best friend, Jim MacGregor. Jim and I have been friends, movie buffs, cottage mates, and travel buddies for over 42 years. I know that's not a big number. I've heard of people in this room where it was 50 and 55 and 60 years. So 42 is the best I can do.
Pretty good.
Jim left us before he or any of us were ready on Tuesday, May 10th. On that day, his body could no longer cope with the pulmonary fibrosis that had affected his lungs. I'm sure there isn't a person in this room who wasn't shocked by the news. On the day before he died, Jim indicated that he had two priorities. One was to plan the celebration of his life, and the other was to spend as much time as possible with his family. Sadly, he didn't get time to plan this party, but I think his kids have done a very good job. But he did tell us he wanted a splendid bash with lots of laughs, food, and drink. Gratefully, he spent his final hours with Stephanie and Ian, Stephen and Les, and his grandchildren, just as he had wished. The day after Jim died, I was singing to myself, which I do often to the annoyance of those around me. The song was Fire and Rain by James Taylor. The line I kept repeating was, I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, but I always thought that I'd see you again. I know that last phrase is a sentiment shared by many here today. Jim's parting was so sudden. He was charming his nurses on Monday night, typical, but gone on Tuesday. We feel it impossible that we will not see him again. Our hearts are broken. Several years ago, in what at the time was a lighthearted conversation about funerals, Jim said, well, Neil will do my eulogy. Notice it was not up for discussion. So here I am. The conversation moved on, but the request/order stuck with me. I wondered how, when the day came, I could do justice to a life so multidimensional, so meaningful. It would be impossible for me to capture the full breadth of Jim's life. I'm not sure any of us knows the full impact he had on so many lives and so many causes. The best I can do is to share with you the Jim I knew and admired. I first met Jim at Rideau Regional Center when he was unit director for the education unit. I remember a somewhat skinny guy. Yeah, that changed.
Very nice.
Who had hair, that changed. And lots of energy. Who seemed a bit too young, quite frankly, to be in the powerful position of unit director. His youth, however, was deceiving. Even in those early years, Jim was a force to be reckoned with. He, along with many others, helped alter the face of that faceless institution. He was instrumental in getting residents into their own, quote, normal clothing, and in serving meals family style, from bowls and platters to tables rather than via a cafeteria line. It may seem like these were just little changes, but they helped to bring some dignity to the lives of people in a setting where dignity and respect were sometimes in short supply. From Rideau Regional, Jim moved to CHIO, where he worked as a social worker for several years, assisting children and youth during some of the most difficult times of their lives. Even while working, Jim did much volunteering, sitting on boards and providing informational workshops, especially in the areas of human sexuality and treatment of people differently abled. During this time, Jim established relationships with people who were to become lifelong friends. Rick Tutt and Frank Black, Pat Cairns and Marty Shackleton, Pat Jeeves, and the late Kenny Edgerton. Upon retirement from Shield, he continued his efforts to help children, doing home studies for couples seeking to adopt a new son or daughter from a distant land. Retirement gave Jim that unique opportunity to spend his time on the things he cared about most: theater, choir, church, traveling, bridge, LGBTQ issues, yoga, family dinners, and his grandchildren. Trying to schedule time to go to a movie or dinner with Jim was like trying to organize a G8 summit. Throughout his life, the United Church was a place where Jim found a sense of community. He was a man of profound depth who never stopped thinking about life's biggest issues. Discussions with Jim could be very passionate, but always respectful of others' views. He loved hearing what others had to say, and he loved being around people. Through the church, Jim did some of his best work and had some of his best times. He was a member of the choir for many years and was instrumental in establishing a youth group for local members of the LGBTQ community, a group that has expanded beyond Carlton Place to the Sydenham Street United Church in Kingston. He made extensive efforts through the Affirm United organization to ensure that his church and many others across Ontario welcomed all people. Although it has not yet declared itself an affirming congregation, the mission statement of the Zion Memorial Church indicates that it is moving rapidly in that direction. It reads in part, to develop an inclusive community where all people are welcome, including, but not limited to, all ages, race, gender, sexual orientation, differing abilities, ethnic origins, and economic circumstances. Jim's effort to advance the Affirm movement have been a major focus for him over the last few years. It is a cause he believed was necessary and achievable. The hours he spent at meetings across the province were evidence of his determination and perseverance for this cause. The church, however, was by no means the only place where Jim's presence was felt. On Tuesdays, he looked forward to the town's Hungry Lunch program, where he pitched in, always smiling and offering an encouraging, or more often teasing word. He took grandson Henry to play group at Children's Resources on Wheels, and, not surprisingly, was invited to sit on the board of directors, a post he held for 6 years. He was also chair of the Carlton Place Hospital's Patient and Family Advisory Committee, and he, along with others, sponsored the daily support and education of several children at the Operation Shanti Orphanage in Mysore, India, which we visited in 2010. Jim had a rich working and volunteer life. He dedicated himself to elevating the lives of others, sometimes in the face of stiff opposition. But when work was over, I think it was fair to say that Jim knew how to play. Oh, did he know how to play. Back in the olden days when we worked at Rideau, I cannot tell you the number of civitan dances we attended, nor the number of women who would line up to dance with Jim. He was in his element, in the midst of the crowd, usually with rum and coke in his hand, and it didn't seem to bother his dancing. dancing up a storm. To say we partied hardy in those days is an understatement. Thank goodness it was just a short drive from the Civitan Club to Jim and Adele's home in Newgate. It was also in those early days that Jim's love of theater and performing became apparent. First, there was the Smiths Follies, a local theater group in Smiths Falls. For those who attended the first production of the company, who will ever forget the spirited tribute to Holly Dormans, delivered with enthusiasm by Jim, his longtime friends Roger and Leanne Sands, and others. Jim, Roger, and Leanne subscribed to the National Arts Center English Theater every season for over 4 decades. Car rides home from Ottawa would be spent reviewing each play and solving the other problems of the world. Roger had difficulty getting a word in edgewise when Jim and Leanne were together. And of course, there was the Mississippi Muds. Carlton Place's own local theater troupe. Hope that's not me. As both actor and director, Jim relished the hours of set preparation, practicing lines, costume design, and production with the many friends he met over the years through the Muds. It is in the Muds Jim developed friendships with 2 of his dearest friends, Jan Ferguson and Louise Link. Jan probably knows more about Jim than she ever wanted to. More than she ever wanted to, because she was roommates with Jen and her husband Phil on Ramsey Concession 8, and most recently on Napoleon Street. I know how much Jim valued all of the friends he made in the Muds. Jim had other interests too. I don't know where he found the time, but he did. He was an avid bridge player, a voracious reader, an accomplished pianist, a computer geek, an energetic gardener, and a curious, enthusiastic traveler. It is this latter pursuit that I knew best. In the early days, it was Florida, Las Vegas, and Grand Canyon, or one of the many summer cottages Sue and I shared with Jim and whatever dogs were in our lives at the time. There were trips to Scotland and Ireland, Egypt and Jordan with friends. In recent years, he escaped winter snows, taking up temporary residence in Zihuatanejo, New Mexico. As we became more adventurous, we visited Thailand and India, where Jim rode numerous elephants, where he was ferried through the desert on a 3-day camel trek, and where he bravely walked alongside his favorite animal, a Bengal tiger. Jim was the best kind of traveler. There wasn't much he wouldn't try once, whether it was kissing a cobra or swimming with giant manta rays. In Bangkok, you won't be surprised by this, he gleefully jumped onto the stage to appear with the featured ladyboys. In Mysore, India, he was interviewed for TV and newspaper as a guest of honor, complete with black bear headdress. I don't know if Stephanie has that in the slideshow she's going to give us later, but watch for it, it may be there. We never did figure out exactly what the gathering was in celebration of, or why Jim was brought onto the stage. It was no surprise. But he graciously accepted the honor bestowed on an honored guest. During these trips, I saw the mature Jim turn childlike in his curiosity about and acceptance of people around the world. I have many cherished memories and photos of those times. I cannot deliver this tribute without a reference to Jim's sexual orientation. Jim came out as a gay man at a time when admitting being homosexual brought with it huge risks. Risk of ridicule, loss of friends, family alienation, the peril of AIDS, and even violence. Jim knew those risks, and I can only imagine the agonizing days and nights he must have spent before making his feelings known. It did not matter to me whom Jim loved, and fortunately, the overwhelming majority of his friends and family felt the same. But Jim didn't know that before he made his declaration, and his courage in doing so only added to my admiration of the man. Finally, I turned to Jim's greatest passion in life, his family. Although he had many interests, many travels, and many friends, Jim's love of family was his greatest pleasure. Stephanie and Stephen were the center of Jim's world. Being a father was the most important role he ever played, and he knew it. As they grew, Jim's pride just got bigger and bigger, and he was lucky enough to have not only been their dad, but also their friend. On a daily basis, Jim showed Steph and Stephen how being together as a family was the most important thing in life. It didn't matter what they were doing, as long as they did it together. This included time spent with Jim's brother Ian and his late wife Gail. Steph and Stephen will remember, and some of you may have seen the picture, packing all manner of camping equipment into the Honda Civic for the long drive to the East Coast. Stephen told me the other day that he sat on 3 sleeping bags the entire time. Seat belts, of course, were an afterthought. And they will remember a canoe trip we took to Algonquin Park when they were quite young. We slept with a prowling mother bear and a cub close at hand. Throughout our adventures together, there was never any doubt that these 2 children were the most important part of Jim's life. His pride and protectiveness of his 2 kids were every bit as ardent as that mother bear for her cub. Over time, Jim's family expanded to include Toby, Leslie, Ian, Glenn, and most recently, 5 grandchildren: Alex, Zachary, Henry, Janelle, and Corey. It is hard to say which he loved more, his children or their offspring. I recall the final few days of our first trip to India. I was longing for a soft bed and a rare steak. Jim's only yearning was to see his grandkids. He loved them with all his heart. It is clear that this love was reciprocal. If you have not already seen it, here's a quotation from an entry in the Barker Funeral Home guest book written by Jim's grandson, Alex. "Thank you for teaching me all the lessons of life a man would ever need to know. All the things you have done for me and all the times we have spent together. There is no way to express how much I love you. You will never be forgotten. Rest in peace, Papa." Jim valued every moment he got to spend with his grandsons, Alex, Zachary, and Henry. The times he spent with them were some of the best of his life. And most recently, he had the added employment of being grandfather to Ian's children, Janelle and Corey. I could go on for much longer talking about Jim, and I'm sure you all have numerous stories you could add. But Jim would be the first to say, "Tell me to wrap it up." My butt is getting sore. I'm tired of standing at the back of the hall. Besides, some of my memories are not suitable for a PG-14 audience. So although I am greatly saddened by Jim's passing, I do not grieve it. We will all leave the earth someday, And when my time comes, I hope to be able to look back on a life half as rich as Jim's. He touched so many people. Your presence here today is testament to that. The causes he advanced were many. His adventures were numerous, and most importantly, he had a loving and supportive family who were with him in his final hours. So we gather here to celebrate a life well lived. We will cherish the years we shared with him and the many things he taught us. In living a full, rich, loving, and meaningful life, Jim enriched all of ours. Thank you. I will now call on another extremely good friend of Jim's, Mr. Rick Tutt.
This is going to be very short, but the biggest pleasure I have today is getting the last word in with Jim. Texting when he was in the hospital up until Monday. Actually, Frank and I were downstairs at the general at a doctor's appointment. Something that seems to happen far too often. And I texted Jim. Now, he had not good news, but and he texted me back and just said, have a good trip and say hello to Frank. And so he had the last word then, but I get it now. Jim passed away on the Tuesday when I was on my way to Victoria to see my sister. Because of circumstances, she'd been moved into, or had moved into a long-term care facility. So for the first time in my life, I was in her house alone. And so I spent a lot of time there while I was, the 4 days I was in Victoria. And I kept thinking the same thought over and over again, and it's the pain that you feel when you lose someone is directly proportionate to the joy that they brought into your life. And the pain is very real, but my God, the joy is real too. I met Jim just about 50 years ago, and he and Frank and I have been friends ever since. As I put together a couple of things that I wanted to say, and I'm going to be short, I went to his Facebook, and it was one of the most interesting Facebooks that I've ever connected with. And I'm going to quote a couple of things that he posted. We were certainly privileged to see Steph and Stephen grow up and be part of their growing up. The cottage at High Street and all other places. And later the joy and happiness that he found with his grandchildren. And he truly, truly loved you. And one of his Facebook's quotations was, happiness is when you realize that your kids turn out to be genuinely good people. And he won there. Jim really had two sides to his being. One was the serious side, and the other was the humorous side. And quite often they overlapped and they came together. One was his humor, always close to the surface and ready to spill over and take over the situation. I remember one time, many, many years ago, Jim and I went to the National Art Center. And we did it a couple of times, not as much as he did with Roger and Leanne. But we happened to go this one night to to see what we thought was going to be a performance of Handel's Messiah. I wanted a little bit of culture. And when we got there, we realized it was a two-part performance. The first part was the Hallelujah chorus, and the second part was a sing-along with Christmas carols. So we got through the Hallelujah chorus, and it was really nice, and it was meaningful, and that probably was enough for me, Handel's Messiah. But then we started singing Christmas carols, and Jim, in that dry voice that only Jim could have, leaned over to me and said, "Tut, I didn't pay $50 to come to the Art Center and hear you sing." Do you think you could mouth the words? Needless to say, Jim never asked me to join the Mugs. The other was his ability and drive and desire to give to others, and that was evidenced by so many causes that he was involved with. And you just have to read the Alan Barker guest book, and people commented on the impression Jim made to them and to their organization. I was really fortunate that Jim and I shared a lot of his involvement, generally around issues to do with intellectual disability. And something he posted on his Facebook that really just talks about his commitment to people, to issues, was "Let us feed the hungry, house the homeless, stop the killing, and provide medicine for the sick. And when we accomplish all that, then we can sit around and argue about religion." They say it's not what you get out of life that's meaningful, but what you put into life that's important. And Jim gave so much to so many, and this is just a testament to that. He was a wonderful person, and he was a dear friend. I'll end with one more thought from his Facebook, and this is probably the most poignant thing that I read on the Facebook. "Every box of raisins is a tragic tale of grapes that could have been wine."
Wow. I'm Stephanie, Jim's daughter. I'm very nervous. As you all know, my dad never had any difficulty standing in front of a room, sharing his views, his opinions, true feelings and beliefs. It was just one of the qualities he possessed. While Dad was in the hospital, I had a nurse tell me that I had many of the same qualities as Dad. I assure you that public speaking isn't one of them. Honest. I would first like to thank everyone for being here today. To see so many people who love Dad and want to celebrate his life is just incredible. I am impressed at how much he must have touched your lives. Dad's wish was to have a celebration of his life, where people could come together in this location and share memories and laughs. He didn't want us to mourn. He just wanted us to celebrate a life lived to the fullest. So as we say goodbye to my dad and share the stories of his life, just imagine that smile and how proud he was to know you all. My dad was a man who did so much for everyone else. His efforts to assist others didn't stop at the edge of our community. He was able to reach people around the world and make it a better place. Even as he was fighting against his illness with more strength and courage than I can imagine, he continued to strive for equality for all. My dad, who was expending such energy and strength to fight for more time, never quite accepted the mark he left on so many lives. All the lives he profoundly changed. I wish he could have been here today, if only to see the incredible good he did in the world. I'm so proud of my dad. How could I not be? My dad was a hero to so many. He spent his life in service of people. He could have used his powerful intellect chasing down wealth and power, but instead, he chose to serve. My dad is one of the smartest people I've ever known, and he chose a life of service. More than that, he had a powerful respect for the people he served. Okay. Dad believed also that kindness could be created through the work he did in the world. You felt it from him, and his work as a social worker came from a few deeply held beliefs. One was the idea that the purpose of life was that you should try to leave the world a little bit better off because you happen to have lived in it. And the other was that every person had a right to dignity, equality, and a fair shake at life. It was from my father that I learned that kindness has to be tempered by true steel in your spine, a lesson that was proven invaluable to me. But my father's steel, his courage, was incredible. Last year, after receiving a terminal diagnosis, my dad was still fighting. He continued to work with many groups, families, and individuals in their personal pursuit of acceptance and inclusion. He joined many boards simply to fight for and support the voices of everyone. My dad just wanted the best. The belief in standing up for what is right was not just in his public life, but in his private life too. That was who he was. My dad was an entertainer, not just through the involvement with the Mississippi Muds, but also the regular dinner parties he hosted. From the presentation of an 8-course meal, followed by port and amaretto, Dad would begin playing the piano. We all joined in with the famous Red Books and sang along until the conga line formed. The night usually would end with a couple of unexpected guests arriving late, wearing their uniforms, and indicating the noise was bothering others. I haven't quite come to the terms with the fact that I'll never have another conversation with my dad. I am sure I share that with many of you. As much as anything else, I am angry that we were robbed of his third act. He and I talked about the things he wasn't going to have time for. There were still celebrations to plan. There were still battles to fight. In an era where it was so important to make sure that all people have a right to a say in their own lives, a right to self-determination and self-worth. And we have lost one of our great champions in that fight. Let us all, to quote my dad, try to make the world a better place because we happen to have lived in it. The world is a better place because Jim MacGregor lived in it for 74 years. It is because of the way he lived both his private and public lives. Now it's our turn. We have to ask ourselves, what would Jim do? And granted, the answer would usually involve profanity, and then there would be action. We should all work just a little harder to make the world a better place because we happen to have lived in it. To do that is to honor his life and honor his memory. It has the added benefit of being the right thing to do. Thank you, Dad, for being the most incredible dad I could have ever wanted. Thank you for making me want to make the world a better place, and for you, along with Mom, showing me a path to do so. Thank you for making sure that I have known that I was loved each and every day. I love you, Dad, and I'll miss you more than I can say. Thank you.
Some of you may know me, some what I'm saying? And I said, absolutely. So, you want another try? You can do it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Henry. Okay, let's go on. So we all know Jim was a very good dad, grandfather, and a very good friend. And we all know his life was, he lived a very good life, but May 10th was when he had to go. We will all miss him, but we will all know he is watching us, and we all loved him. We want to have a great time celebrating when Papa was alive. He was a great man.
There we go. So before we start the slideshow, we had just so many laughs and memories going through all the photos, and just saying to ourselves, it is amazing what Dad has accomplished in 74 years. So we've chosen 2 songs. The first song, which had a special meaning to Dad, which is called What a Wonderful World. And the second, which Steve and I remember Dad best when we hear it, is called It's Raining Men. It's kind of the song we played, from the dinner parties. Kind of ended up that Dad with the umbrella, dancing around the kitchen table. So I hope this slideshow brings as much enjoyment to you as it brought us while we created it. And just because of it's an Apple product, there's just a little glitch in one of the songs. It's only like 2 seconds, so I hope you guys enjoy it.
I see trees that are green, red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow, and they'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, oh, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of the people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? But they're really saying, I love you. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I think to myself, ooh, what a wonderful world.
Hi, we're your weather girl. And have we got news for you? You better listen. Get ready, all you lonely girls, and leave those umbrellas at home. All right.
It's rising,
Rising.
problems getting low.
How low, girl?
According to all sources,
What sources now?
the streets the place to
We better
go.
hurry up. 'Cause tonight, for the first time, just about 10:30, for the first time, hits the
Thank you for that. Just a few thank yous. On behalf of our family, we'd like to thank Dennis Burns, Leatherworks, who did such an amazing job catering today. I know Dad liked you very much and always raved about the catered dinner parties that you did with the Friday night bunch. So thank you, Dennis. Also, a huge thank you to Dan Crampton from Motion, who designed Dad's celebration of life cards, and they're at the front if you can take them home with you, and that's just allowing you to take a memory home of Dad. And again, going way back, thank you, Rick, for sharing your special memories of Dad with us. And dropping me on my head when I was like, what, 1? It's all good. I turned out okay. And finally to Neil, you've always been there for us and for my dad, and we greatly appreciate your support, especially these past 2 weeks. So thank you for everything you shared that allows us all to remember our dad for who he was. Thank you. A little story before we leave.
You know I couldn't resist. And you all have these wonderful memories of Jim, but I just have a little story to tell you about what he was really like. We were traveling in Egypt. We shared a room because it's cheaper and we were both cheap. Not usually a bed, just the room. We're sailing down the Nile and I dressed for dinner and I thought I looked like Cleopatra. And I came down this beautiful staircase and our Habibi, our guide, oh, he was so gorgeous. Jim thought so too. Anyway, Habibi takes me by the arm, walks me to the bar, and I'm just feeling so loved. Egyptian manner. Anyway, the men at the bar said, what about Mr. Jim? And I said, oh, don't worry about Mr. Jim, he's my brother. Oh, good. So we find Jim at the